What's up, everybody? It's your boy True Element 78 in the building with
Your reigning and defending Mondo Lucha Hall of Famer, the X-Man, Xavier Mustafa.
And last but not least, I am the natural Chris Black, aka the infamous narcissist.
and today is November 16th, 2019, and you are tuned into a very special edition of Saturday Night Slamcasters here on our YouTube channel. This is continuing our Viceland series or Viceland review, or however you want to phrase it. The review of the Dark Side of the Ring of Viceland series, where they cover different topics in professional wrestling, and we're covering season 1, which was 6 episodes long. Today we're going to be discussing the second episode of the series, which was the Montreal Screwjob. On the last episode, you guys heard it was about Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth. So today we're going to be covering the Montreal Screwjob. The next episode is going to be dropping on November 30th, and that is going to cover the killing of Bruiser Brody. So, continue with our series. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, share, do all of those good things. Give us a thumbs up if you don't mind doing that for us. So, like I said, the second episode covered the Montreal Screwjob. Everybody knows the story of the Montreal Screwjob. For the most part, if you're a wrestling fan, we have a wrestling podcast, so we're wrestling fans, so we've heard this story hundreds and hundreds of times over the years. It changed professional wrestling forever. It is what really essentially killed kayfabe for the most part, if you really want to view it that way. So I'll kick things off with Xavier Mustafa on anything that he found interesting or new information that he may have taken away from this episode.
New information. I think this is when it first came out that Jim Cornette was actually the one that suggested it.
Do you think,
in passing, thinking Vince McMahon would just shit on it and thought he was going to shit on it?
do you think
They came back and was like, "Yep, we're doing that."
so you believe Jim Cornette, not Vince Russo, that Vince
Oh,
Russo
I definitely believe Jim Cornette over Vince Russo. Definitely, without a doubt. I don't trust anything. Like something Bobby the Brain Heenan would say. I wouldn't trust anything he says if his tongue was notarized.
Right.
Yeah, I think that was one of the interesting tidbits in this documentary that had never really been stated, on it being pitched by Jim Cornette in passing. Also thought it was funny how he said he beat Earl Hebner getting out of the damn building after it went down.
He was like, "I started my car, I see some lights on behind me. It's Herb. It's heavy."
The one thing that I didn't know, I mean, I've heard different sides from this story. I've heard everyone that was involved, anyone that's made any public statements. I've heard it. I don't get enough listening about this story. It's really interesting. But the one thing, speaking of Jim Cornette, that I didn't know, when he was discussing the Hart family and how he was saying how, they would invite the guys over for breakfast and you'd have Stu Hart with the spatula cooking eggs and flipping cat shit with the spatula and then going back and cooking the eggs. I'm like, okay.
He said they
He tells them they had a bear underneath their porch. It's like a real life Addams family or Munster family.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Also, I knew about Stu Hart. I didn't know how many generations deep that Bret Hart came out of that family, and that literally everyone in the family was a wrestler or married a wrestler. So that was very interesting. I knew all the boys that wrestled. I didn't know all the girls that married wrestlers and that information. And let's see what else. Like, kind of learning about how Bret was the third generation superstar and how they basically said that it's funny you have this family that's ingrained in professional wrestling, and also this family pretty much brought down professional wrestling, or should I say Bret Hart brought down professional wrestling, or at least extinguished the veil of kayfabe, which had already began to be pierced with the curtain call and with who was it that was caught with the cocaine in the car together? The Iron Sheik and I forgot who he got caught in the car with the cocaine with back in the day.
Was it that guy?
Oh yeah, Hacksaw Jim Duncan and Iron
Yeah,
Sheik got caught in the car with the cocaine, and they were supposed to be beefing.
Is it bad in 2019 when you say who was caught in the car with the cocaine? Like
You're like,
13 names pop to your head? I'm still like, who could it be?
He's like, the
It could be
Hardys, the Usos. Yeah, so
Oh, that's
I,
terrible.
I found those interesting. Also, it was just kind of funny, like how you mentioned that Jim Cornette, you believe Jim Cornette, to hear him give that example of the match from 1931 and how it was a screw job and he had put the bite on the guy's chest and then the ref had seen it, so he threw the match out and awarded the title. To just hear him go back and like know the history of wrestling like that, I'm like, yeah, I'm a lot more inclined to believe Jim Cornette because that's just some random information to just have sitting around laying in wait for over 30 something
Right.
years, or not
Absolutely.
over 20
You
something
know,
years, I should say.
Yeah,
one thing about
absolutely.
Jim,
All you got to do is listen to Jim Cornette's podcast, and he's always bringing up something from history or past history, or recalling certain angles or storylines or whatever. So I trust Jim Cornette. Plus, he hasn't really one. Jim Cornette's a lot of things. He hasn't been really proven to be a liar. So I'm always gonna trust his word over a liar like I always
Vince
forget his
Russo.
name, Russo.
One thing I will say about Jim Cornette, like, because I've listened to the Experience forever, and he kept detailed notes about his entire career in wrestling. And then he used to have some episodes where, and granted, he remembers like 95% of this stuff. He may not remember like specific dates or stuff like that, but he'll go through this book and he'll be like, all right, he'll have a whole show on what he did within a 2-year span. And he'll do what shows he's been in, what was the draw, what match he was in, what was the main event, and he'll tell you, and then he'll go into detail about it. And like for the entire year, he'll be like, yep, we started at this place, and this place drew this much and made this money. He even tell you what it made in inflation, so how much it would be now. And these people was making big money back in the day, and that's why Jim Cornette says he has a problem with people saying that, oh, he's too out of touch and all this other stuff. And he's like, I've lived it, I've made money. If we were still making the money we were making back in the day, a lot of us will be rich.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. It was kind of funny when Vince Russo tried to throw Jim Cornette under the bus. He was like, he's still living in the 70s. He's like, let him debut in a box. Everybody's over when they come out of a box. I was like, wow, that's
Jim
hilarious.
Cornette said he told his wife that she is out of the will. If Vince Russo dies before him, she has to wheel him out in his wheelchair to Vince Russo's grave so he can piss on it. And if she doesn't do it, she is out of the
Oh,
will.
you forgot. They also have to take a picture so he can put it on his wall.
Oh yeah. So it'll be in his wall when he dies.
Which that was also interesting. They had some of his greatest hate mail and death threats framed and placed on his wall as well.
Yeah.
But getting back to the screw job itself, I thought it was kind of interesting the reenactments they had with Vince McMahon basically getting knocked out like old boy from Friday, where Bret Hart says he hit him with an uppercut so hard that he lifted off of his feet and flew into the air.
You gotta I gotta give Vince McMahon some credit on this one, because everybody else that knew what was going on hightailed it out of the building, right? But the only one that stayed back was Vince. And not only did Vince stay back, he went to his locker room, was threatened, and was like, when I get out of my shower, you better be gone. And Vince stayed there and waited till he got out of the shower because he was going to talk to him and let him know, like, hey, this is why I did this, and had to take an L.
I don't want to stroke Vince, but I mean, that just really shows what type of man he is. He know what he did. He made the call. He owned it, and he took his licks like a man.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, not even just that. When he called the meeting with all of the talent and was like, "Don't blame Earl Hebner. This was my decision. It's my company. If you don't like it, you can walk." Like, wouldn't even just let go of talent.
He ain't gonna say that today.
Yeah, he wouldn't say that today. I think it was like pulling teeth getting them to admit over almost a year ago when Vince and Stephanie and Triple H and Shane all came down to the ring and said, we haven't been entertaining you guys. We've been airing petty grievances. You guys are the authority now. I think that took a lot for them to say, now, even though ain't shit changed, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Like the whole situation. Now, anyone who knows me knows that Bret Hart is my number one as far as on my list of top wrestlers. Shawn Michaels is my number 2. The only reason why he's in number 2, he doesn't have the number 1 spot, is because personally he's just a jackass. I think that if I would have known Shawn Michaels back in the 90s, guarantee I would have probably wanted to kick his ass as well. But with that being said, I have to side with Vince as far as whose fault this was. Bret Hart should have known when you are going to another promotion, you leave on your back. Regardless of how you feel personally about anybody else, Bret screwed Bret. He should have just dropped the title to Shawn Michaels and called it a day.
Right, so you mean you putting heat on Hart then?
Yes, I put it on Bret Hart. All the heat's on Bret Hart.
I think you said
he caused all of this.
Well, yes, I totally agree with that. You know you got to take that L when you leave. And he already got his contract with WCW. WCW was going to take his career either way it went. So he could have just went ahead, just took that L, and everybody would have been fine. But at the same time, too, like, I get it. He's like, okay, I don't want to lose in my town. Well, lose before that.
It wasn't even about losing in Canada. It was about losing to Shawn Michaels in Canada.
And I guess
the Canada thing was on top of it too, though. It was one.
I've never had that type of heat with someone where I'm just like, no. Well, first of all, I've never refused a job to anybody, but like I have a hard time. I don't know. I guess I'd have a hard time working with someone who I had some personal issues with.
But like he said,
it might be a little difficult.
Inside those ropes, they made magic, even though they hated each other. And also that can be
that
could be a motivator too, because you guys are trying to, because they both think they're the best. That was really what the beef was. That they both think that they're the best, and so you're gonna go in there, you're both gonna try to outdo each other. Now the whole trying to intentionally hurt somebody, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, yeah, that's. I don't know, but when you hear stories of a totally unrelated match where Shawn Michaels had to drop the title to Stone Cold in his last night, when you have guys like The Undertaker taping his wrist because he wanted to make sure Shawn did the right thing, it's like that kind of lets you know what type of person he was backstage.
Right.
Yeah, honestly, I don't really see how that type of shit is tolerated, like in any work environment. Like, you do what the boss tells you. Like, who cares if you don't like it or not? You go out there and do, you're supposed to be a professional. This is
Shawn
professional
thought he was untouchable. He thought he was untouchable back then.
Yeah, fuck you, Shawn.
I thought you was about Bret Hart.
But the thing is, Bret Hart already gave Shawn Michaels them hands earlier. Like he said, actually, Jim Cornette said it was probably more like a girl fight where they were all pulling each other's hair. But I mean, they had gotten to a physical altercation like months before, years before.
Bret Hart was talking plenty shit in this documentary about how it seemed like every time they interacted, Shawn Michaels was seen weeping in a corner, holding his hair.
I mean, think about it. Like, okay, so Shawn Michaels is billed at 6'1". Okay, let's do the math. Real life, he's probably 5'11", if that. Now you got this short ass dude running around talking a whole lot of shit. I swear I would have kicked. I promise you, I would have had to kick his ass in the 90s.
Yeah, but see,
my attitude, I wouldn't have given a fuck about Vince McMahon or how he thought about it.
You keep hearing these stories about like Shawn Michaels, like the thing he did with like JR when he put the things in his tights, and was like making it look like he had a what's the word I'm looking for? A large endowment, if you will. And then he cut the promo on Undertaker, telling him to come out if he was a man, and knew that Undertaker wasn't even building. It was a pre-recorded, like stuff like that. Just really made me hate Shawn Michaels. And of course, I didn't know this as a kid that this was going on. I was watching. I was like, "This is weird," but okay, whatever. But now, like as an adult and as a pro wrestler, going back hearing this stuff, it's like, man, I couldn't work with anybody that unprofessional. And Bret Hart too. He has his degree of, a lack of professionalism in this whole situation too. I'm not totally blaming Shawn Michaels for this. Bret Hart takes most of the blame for the Montreal Screwjob, but I don't know. Even though those two are the reasons why I'm in the wrestling business right now, because they're match at WrestleMania, but I still get shit on them.
Right. Let me ask you this: as the owner of a promotion and someone who books matches, and this question also goes out to you as well, Chris Black. I know they said that they offered Bret Hart tons of ideals and ways out of this situation where they could still get the belt off of him. what would have been the one that you would have suggested, or the way that you would have tried to get the belt off of him and allow Bret Hart to save face? I have an idea of what I would have done. What I want to hear from two guys that are in the industry. What do you think would have been the best way out of this situation?
Go ahead, Mustafa.
Ooh, this is a tough one. I would probably say make it a 3-way where he's not part of the decision.
Or I thought about that, but back then they didn't do too many 3-ways.
Right.
The only other thing I could have thought of is ref bump. Someone else comes out like Triple H, fucks Bret when the ref doesn't see it. That way he still goes down, but he goes down because Triple H interfered. Shawn Michaels leaves with heat. Bret Hart gets screwed. He gets pissed off, throws a hissy fit like he did, and goes to another company. He could have cut the promo Monday night like, I'm done. This company is just the shits, and left.
So with the triple threat, the roster was so thin. Who would you have put in there in the triple threat with them at that time? I know it's hard to think back to 1997 and who was ready at that time. Austin wasn't ready yet.
Wait, before I answer that question, though, I just thought about something. You know who really is to blame for this? Medusa.
Yeah.
This is all Medusa's fault. If she wouldn't have took that championship over to WCW and threw it in the trash, none of this probably would have happened.
You got to think about this, though. They had already disbanded the women's division when she did that. They just never took the belt from her. Remember, the women's division had been dissolved by the point that's why she left. Was that there was no more
again,
women's.
This is why I can't blame Vince McMahon, because he was only looking out for his company. He could not take that risk of Bret Hart being talked into by WCW. Like, Survivor Series was his last contracted night. He did not have to show up on Monday night and drop the belt like he said he was going to do, which was a bad idea. But anyway, so Vince McMahon did not want to chance Bret Hart showing up at 7 o'clock on WCW television with the WWF belt. He did not. He could not risk that. Right. Even though Bret Hart is not that kind of guy, he couldn't risk it.
Right. Well, he said it wasn't about trusting Bret. It was about distrusting Eric Bischoff. So,
Yep.
The way I would have gotten out of this, and I think that this was one of the ideas that was thrown out in the documentary that they had, was having the Hart Foundation interfere and have a whole bunch of fuckery go on. But what I would have had was a stipulation where any outside interference, the title automatically changes hands.
Yeah.
And so the Hart Foundation could have interfered on Bret's behalf because Shawn was out there. Maybe D-Generation X was getting involved or whatever the case was. And the fuckery happens and the Hart Foundation gets involved and Bret ends up losing, but he ends up dropping the belt to Shawn and he beats Shawn around the arena the same way the match started off. Or you don't even do the beatdown before the bell. Have the standard match. Beatdown takes place after all the fuckery happens. Bret has lost the belt. Shawn has it. Bret can beat his ass, leave with heat, and everything is fine. He didn't go out on his back, but he's not leaving with the belt either.
Right. You know, there's one thing that bothers me whenever we talk about this topic, and it was covered in this episode, when everyone is just like, oh, was it a work? And I mean, you have actual guys like, okay, I get Scott Hall. He makes certain points about the camera angles and stuff like that and how they zoomed in on the spit. But there was too much raw emotion for that to be a work. I believe it happened just as they said it was. Shawn Michaels knew, Vince McMahon knew, Earl Hebner knew, Bret Hart did not.
Well, that's
all Vince had to do is say, pay attention. All he had to do is tell the monkeys in the production truck, no matter what happens, you show everything that goes down at the end of this match.
Yeah, that's the cover for liability too, because if Bret had jumped out of that ring in front of that live crowd and started beating on Vince McMahon's ass, that's a lawsuit. You film everything that goes down from the point of us screwing this man over. Well, not even telling that they're going to screw him over, just. And also, Vince isn't sitting in Gorilla telling them and directing them. That this is all the director and the producer. I don't know if it was Kevin Dunn back then or whatever. You're taught to just capture everything. And
it is kind of it is kind of funny that it just so happened to be that Brett was also taping a documentary, and it just so like, how would that documentary have ended if the Montreal Screwjob had not gone down?
Right.
It'd have been
You
pretty
get what I'm
lame.
saying?
Wrestling with shadows
It
would
would
have
have
been
been
very, very boring. It
I mean, they also kind of invaded Vince McMahon's privacy. I just want to point that out because they was recording it without him knowing.
Well, it depends on
Oh,
what,
yeah.
it depends on what state they were in. You can do that. There's two.
But you know what?
There's 2-party
Vince
states and
McMahon
single
being-
party states.
Vince McMahon being the Spencer that he is,
Like, he was able to spin this into probably what was the turning point for WWE. Like, he created the Mr. McMahon character out of this,
and we all know what happened with that. If it wasn't for this night, who knows what professional wrestling would be looking like right now?
They're the two greatest things that happened to WWE that just happened out of happenstance. Both it's funny. Both times you could pretty much put on the shoulders of WCW. Bret Hart leaving to go to WCW, so Vince having his back against the wall, and then screwing Bret, and then coming up with the Mr. McMahon character. And then Tony Schiavone giving away the end to the Mick Foley match, saying that'll put asses in seats when he won the title. But both of those things happened. WCW basically handed them these storylines or these moments. I'm not even gonna say storylines. He handed them these moments, and the WWE capitalized on them.
I wonder if Tony.
Go ahead.
I wonder if Tony Khan put in Tony Schiavone's contract. Listen, don't be spoiling don't be spoiling other events. Don't be telling people to change the channels.
I know this kind of sounds like I've been stroking a lot of Vince McMahon's ego right now, but okay, so everyone wants to say how Vince is out of touch or whatever, but when this man knows his shit, he knows his shit.
Hey, I just want to
He
throw a
told
disclaimer.
Bret Hart back then, WCW would not know what to do with Bret Hart. And he was 100% right about that. They absolutely ruined him.
Right. And
in
I want to throw this
WCW.
disclaimer out there that this man has been paid by Vince McMahon to say these things.
Holla at me, Vince.
On record, on video.
I do see an envelope on his desk right now with the WWE logo. I'm just saying.
Hey.
The funniest thing, and I want to bring this up because this episode couldn't have came at a better time than we recently had the firing of Eric Bischoff from WWE from doing a piss poor job at his job, which was supposed to be directing and booking and talent relations and all of those different types of things.
I disagree with that, but okay.
And then you have us watching this documentary where Eric Bischoff himself is on there saying, yeah, could we have done a better job? I did a piss poor job of introducing Bret. I could have did a better job with the talent that was Bret Hart. And what do you disagree with?
You know what? I'm okay. So I mean, I'm not going to go on a long tangent about this because I know this is not what we're talking about. But that firing of Eric Bischoff is bullshit. All right. First of all, blaming that dude because they lost 1 million viewers between 1 week and the next. What did they think was going to happen? Everybody's going to tune in to see the first episode, and then they're going to be like, okay, I'm done. He had to have been in an impossible situation.
Well,
I heard there was other things, like he was showing up to meetings late. I mean, he was doing a lot of shit. He
wasn't getting to know the talent. The talent was saying he couldn't be found, he couldn't be bothered. But like you said, that's a whole different tangent. We've spoken about that on the podcast already. Everybody's listened to that at length. But it's just kind of interesting just to hear. Here we are, 22 years later, and like he just said, they wouldn't know what to do with a talent like Bret Hart, and you see that with the recent firing of Eric Bischoff a couple weeks back. So
let's put him in the ring with Goldberg.
That as well, but introducing him as a guest referee, that just was boneheaded, especially when he was coming over with so much heat, piss and fire. And by that time, way past that time, Austin had already cut his ECW pro. So they knew what to do somebody with a whole bunch of piss and vinegar in their system to get him over. So I don't know why that's the way they decided to introduce Bret Hart. But
And I remember them talking about on the podcast when they was talking about that. Like they were like, "Oh, we already had this booked up or whatever." But there's certain exceptions with certain people. You switch that shit around. I don't care if you've been planning this for 18 years. You got Bret Hart on your roster, bro. Like, I guess referee spot, really?
Bro.
They should have known better.
And I was shocked that we didn't get Vince Russo saying bro once. I think they must have edited it out of this documentary because he didn't say bro in any of those discussions.
Maybe they edited it out.
So I was thinking, now we all know that nobody has the balls in WWE to ever like grandstand against one of Vince McMahon's requests, like especially to drop the title. But if another screw job like this were to happen in today's wrestling world, where would it more likely happen and what under what circumstance?
I don't think it could happen again. I think this was a time capsule. This was a moment in time because yeah,
I think they're more smart about contracts now, where they won't have anybody that's coming towards the end of their title or end of their contract holding the title. Because like take CM Punk. CM Punk said they were running around after him for a year before he finally ended up signing.
He said he signed halfway through Money in the Bank or whatever before he won the title.
Right.
He said he signed halfway through that show. No,
yeah, they'll never have it that close again. Like if you got a title, they try to lock you in at least 6 months for the end of your contract.
Honestly, the only person I could see it happening with, and nobody would do this because nobody wants to fucking die. And honestly, he doesn't care. The only person who could get away with it, the way that Bret Hart went through this, and it's the only person that I hear has creative control, is Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, but who's going to screw Brock?
Braun Strowman.
What could happen? Don't put anything past Vince McMahon.
No. Oh, Cain Velasquez could screw Brock. There's got to be somebody that could legitimately like beat him.
Because there's some things you can't control. I mean, you can't control a ref fast count. You can't control a shoot roll up most of the time.
Yeah, but you better get out the ring.
Right. You got to go.
Yeah.
Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, but really, that's the only person. If Brock Lesnar doesn't want to drop the title and his contract is about to be up, like I said, he would have to care. That's the one thing is that people make so much money nowadays. Remember those guaranteed contracts and everything. Bret had got a guaranteed contract from WWE. He had also gotten creative control, but those guaranteed contracts were something that were really introduced in WCW. Those guys that were leaving WWE were going over there because they had the guaranteed contracts for the big money. It was a lighter schedule, all of those little luxuries that they were getting over there in WCW. So
also not to forget, they were about to screw him on his contract too.
Well, WWE.
That's why he went to WCW.
Well, it wasn't that they were about to screw him. Vince came to him like a man and said, "Hey, I know we signed you to a 20-year contract, but I can't afford that right now." So it wasn't about screwing.
Yeah, but the reason why I say screw him on that is because, and this is what I never understood about how these contracts work. So I signed this contract, but technically you can still terminate me at any moment. However, I just can't leave at any moment. Like, I feel like it's really only one-sided.
Well, no, if you have a contract with someone and they fire you, I mean, they still got to pay you out your contract.
Do they?
Yeah, because you're contracted for the amount.
Well, no, they could. It depends on what. I was gonna say stopgaps. I can't really think of the word that I'm thinking of right now, but pretty much whatever outs that they have written into the contract. Like
okay,
but like I said, they can fire you at any time.
Yeah, but you can't just quit.
But you just can't leave if you just say, "Hey, I'm done. I don't want to be here."
Well, yeah, you probably can't do that, but they could probably be like
list of how you're going to get fired and do whatever's on that list.
Yeah, unless well, a lot of
that to me, I think it's kind of
well, really the ways that most people get out, like those type of contracts, and this is in general, you retire is how you can get out of a contract. You say that you're retiring, boom, you're out of your contract. You get injured and can no longer perform the duties of your contract, then you can get let out of your contract. So, but yeah, I don't know.
It's very one-sided to me.
Right.
We seem to have ignored one particular element of this whole story that I want to bring up.
how shitty of a position did they put Earl Hebner in? Like, Bret Hart sat next to him on the plane, was like, please don't screw me. And he had to look at him and be like, oh, no, brother, I got you.
Well, he said he
But
didn't
you
know
what,
at that
though?
time. He said he didn't know on the plane. He hadn't known just yet.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like it has to be shitty because I remember like, all right, it's another work day. Getting on the plane. I got upgraded to first class. What? All right, let me go into first class. Oh, it's my brother Brett. Hey, what's going on, brother? No, I'm not gonna screw you. Why would I screw you, brother? I love you, man. Come on, let's go to work. Get into work. Hey, Vince, want to talk to you? Okay, hey Vince, how's it going on? We want you to screw Brett.
You love your
I want
job.
you to screw him.
Do you love your family?
And
Oh.
then he said how one of the Stooges grabbed him by the arm, and I guess he said he would have whooped his ass or some shit. Was just like, hey, you
Gerald
better do
Briscoe.
this.
Yeah, he said,
Yeah, Briscoe.
he said
And
when
he like, shit, I got kids at home. They little
Dude
little
said-
referees in training. I gotta.
He had his brother get the getaway car.
yeah, so
And see, if I'm Brett, I'm paying attention to all that. Like, hold on, where your bags? Why you ain't got no bags in the locker room up there? What's going on?
yeah, so out of everything in the entire documentary, I think the most interesting part was the revelation that Jim Cornette pitched the ideal, they ran with it, and that's how Brett screwed Brett.
And then they left my boy Bruce Pritchard like in the dark. He ain't know nothing. He's like, hey, y'all supposed to be doing a run in? And they was like, nah. Something's fucked up here. I remember Bruce was talking about it. They didn't talk about this in the series, but it was supposed to be a run in with the British Bulldog and all of them.
Oh, they
and they're all,
mentioned it.
he's waiting. Huh? Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And there was like, when are we supposed to go? And he's like, I don't know what's happening right now.
I thought their cue was originally when after Brett got put in the sharpshooter, he was going to reverse it, or Triple H or whatever was going to come down, and then it was going to be a big schmaz. Like that was their cue was the sharpshooter.
Right. So yeah, overall, I think that this, if you're a new wrestling fan or a lapsed wrestling fan and maybe never watched any of those documentaries, I think this was a great entry into the series. Like I said, the first episode was Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth. This one was the Montreal Screwjob. Like I said, the greatest revelation from it was Jim Cornette was the mastermind, I guess, inadvertently the mastermind of the entire Screwjob. So you asked, do I think this could happen again? Like I said, the only person I can see it happening with is Brock, and I don't think he cares enough about the belt. The thing about, really, I don't think anybody really, no, I'm not even going to say anybody really in wrestling would care as much, but not a lot of people care as much as Bret Hart cared about his persona, his character. And you can kind of see that when you just watch WWE TV, how so many people don't have characters now.
Now, this is kind of a little offbeat, but when they made the movie Ready to Rumble, now was that kind of, did they use inspiration from the Screwjob, or did that movie come out first?
No, that came out when Bret was already in WCW.
Oh, okay. All right. So they probably used that as inspiration, the whole getting screwed by the promoter.
Yeah, because remember Goldberg was in there.
Oh yeah.
So
That movie was.
anything else you guys want to say about the Montreal Screwjob episode?
No, it's an incredible story.
Oh, actually, there was one more thing. What did you think about Bret Hart really exposing the business after the Screwjob, going on all the news channels, going to all of the newspapers and saying, hey, like, I didn't agree to that, yada, yada, yada.
Well, you know what? I mean, he's already proved that, and not trying to shit on Bret Hart, but he already kind of proved that he's unprofessional. So by not wanting to drop the title when the boss asked him to drop the title. So it wouldn't have surprised me.
If I'm WCW, don't you think they should have been telling him, shut the fuck up? You're kind of putting over WWE by continuing to talk about them. It's kind of the same thing how we say nowadays about AEW, keep people, former wrestlers from WWE that are in AEW now, and they keep wanting to bring up WWE and take little jabs at them. And it's like, stop talking about them. You're kind of putting them over now. Like, get them off of your brain. You're not in that space anymore. Why does it matter?
Yeah, I think it was kind of bad form for Brett to basically cry on television.
I think it was his pride that got to him because he didn't want to be known as, oh, I submitted to my own move in Calgary. Even though, like, even when I was
The
watching that
video
as a
is
kid,
there.
like, it didn't look right. I didn't think Brett, I'm like, that, wait a minute, he didn't give up.
So it didn't fool any of the marks, I don't think. So it was nothing but an ego. It hurt his ego.
And I thought it was hilarious when he said Sean didn't even know how to put the sharpshooter on him, so he had to correct him on the fly.
Well, I mean, have you seen Hogan trying to do the figure four that he put on Ric Flair? Dude, that was
Painful to watch. So you can imagine, like,
if you don't do the move and you don't know how it's done, yeah.
That's just funny that they wouldn't even have walked through it before the match. I know they didn't like each other, but damn.
It's like you've been putting it before, right? Like,
But other than that, you guys want to give out your social medias?
You can catch me at Xavier Mustafa on Facebook and Twitter.
you can catch me at the_natural_CB on Twitter and at the_natural_Chris Black on Facebook and Instagram.
And be sure to subscribe to Saturday Night Slamcasters wherever you get your podcast from. Be sure to leave us a review over there on iTunes. Also, make sure you subscribe to us here on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up if you like this content. Give us a thumbs down if you didn't like this content. Be sure to share with all of your friends and go over to our Facebook page and also like us on Facebook. Our next episode in this series, The Dark Side of the Ring, is going to be about the killing of Bruiser Brody, and that episode is going to be dropping for you guys on November 30th. That's going to be episode 3. So for those of you who don't know, these episodes are dropping opposite weeks of our regularly scheduled podcast episodes. So these are exclusive to YouTube. But like I said, be sure to subscribe to the regular podcast as well, wherever you get your podcast from. We up out of here. Holla at your boys. Peace. Come get slammed.